Let's
Welcome
do
to
it.
the Scratch Mastermind
Yeah.
podcast.
Thank you
How are you
very
doing?
much.
Good to see
Yeah,
you
I'm
again.
good, thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
happy to be here. Happy to be a
Great
part of
stuff.
it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're going to make this a regular thing. We can really deep dive and find
For
out a little
sure.
bit more about you and your journey from starting golf at 10 years old, I think it was, and all the way up to pro player now. And then obviously we'll get into the details around how we met and how the whole Scratch Mastermind concept came about. But maybe just start by telling people a little bit about that journey. Like, I think you started playing at 10. And what was the sort of the progression to pro player?
I think I always loved sports in general. I played football, and then I got into skateboarding for quite a while, and I hurt myself a little bit doing that. That took over, and then one day I was just in Thailand when I was young, and I just started hitting balls on the range, and the coach that was there just kind of said to my dad, like, I think he's really got a hold of this somehow. Like, he's doing really well. Just found it quite easy. Always enjoyed it, but never quite completed it. Any kind of sport that I'd played, I'd get a hold of it, and if I got a bit of praise here or there, it would be like, oh, well, that's boring now, I'll have to go on to another sport, kind of thing. That was just like my young cocky mentality. And golf was just one of those sports that I could never quite do, and it challenged me mentally. It's helped me grow a lot as a person, really, from the first day that I started playing, because it does, people like match it up to life in a lot of ways, like play the ball from where it lies, kind of thing. There's a lot of like famous sayings that kind of fall into golf.
It teaches you a lot of skills.
And so, it does teach you a lot of skills, and you meet a lot of great people. So to be quite honest with you, there's apart from the frustrating side of it, that there's no real dark side to golf if you approach it in the right way. It's just got good and more good to give, kind of thing. So I've like stuck around with it.
Did you have any idea at that time when you first started playing the challenge you were taking on over the next 10 years?
I didn't really, but I've always been up for a challenge, and I've always kind of like had to complete things, whether it's something that's broken around the house, something that's just has to be fixed. I have to fix it, find a way to overcome it. And as the years have gone on, it is a very intense sport that doesn't really allow any gaps, kind of thing. But it's all very personal, and you have to understand yourself first to kind of help play your best golf. That's one thing I've learned.
Did it feel like a puzzle that needed to be solved for you when you started? Obviously, you started for the fun to begin with as a kid, but then you're like, okay, this is like the never-ending puzzle of just discovering more and more the deeper you go.
It is. It's a very stationary sport, and I think stationary sports, I'm going to call them stationary, where you kind of start from you have to make things move in a way, compared to a reactive sport. So football, you get the ball, you've got 1 second to look, and you pass. So there's not many time for like interfering thoughts that can get in the way and affect the way that you perform. Whereas in golf, you have to really be in control of your mind. You have to be in control of your technique, and it's all dead silent. So it's very, very intense. A lot of the time, it's a lot more less intense than your brain's making it out to be. But it is a very stressful sport, and it was new for me. Very similar to snooker and darts, I believe. Things are still, things are quiet. You have to be precise, and there was just so many variables with golf that would change. There was no kind of proof of what I was doing or how I could do it the same the next day, and it really just frustrated me. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to afford all these lessons, and my swings changed, and then I'll go home some days and I'd be sat there in my hotel room. People think you're having a great time, you're away playing golf on these fantastic trips, but it was started to become quite a horrible addiction or some kind of hole that I was in, where I'd just be hoping that swing thought that I found on the 16th hole today would carry through to tomorrow. And then when it didn't, I'd have to be relying on a second one and a third one and making up a fourth one on the 8th hole. And, some days they work and you could play great golf, but it came to a point where I was like, I'm either going to have to play this for a hobby for the rest of my life, or I'm going to have to find a way, because I can't justify these emotions that I'm going through. And I can definitely really relate or understand to some of the pain that, you know, guys on tour must go through, because it can be so tough. And amateurs, yeah. I mean, you know, these guys, they don't even, you know, at least pro golfers get to go to the range every day. These guys are like going to work. They've got a family. They've got kids. They've got so many like responsibilities outside of golf, and then they show up and they get frustrated when they're not playing good golf, when it's the hardest sport in the world. So it's like, it's you've really got to take your hat off to, you know, amateurs who play good golf and can kind of perform on a consistent basis, because, you know, a lot of, you know, you'll meet a lot of like, I'll meet some older guys and play with them. And they'll go, God, you hit it so far and you hit it so straight. And I'm like, well, if you were my age and you were playing every day and you were doing the right things, you'd be pretty good yourself. So like, don't be hard on yourself. It's just about making the most of what you are as a person now and seeing how far you can get as a golfer. That's what it's about. Yeah, and that's what I think we're trying to do.
Yeah, 100%. I think most of us amateurs wish that we'd played golf when we were younger and had some lessons. might have helped
it's so true.
Now.
Yeah, well, your first experience with a golf club is the most important one. That's what they say. So like, it's a bit like your subconscious. So the first move that you make, your body's going to just always go back to it. And, you know, you watch Justin Thomas when he's younger, he swings it pretty much the same way he does now as he did as a kid. And he's just trying to fight those little tendencies that he had. So I find that just really incredible to watch.
Amazing. What point was it in your journey that you realized that, I guess, one, you were good, but two, that opened up the door to think, you know, I can pursue this further, and, you know, to try and get better and better and better to the point where you realize that, actually I'd quite like to go for trying to become a pro player?
Yeah. So I actually went to a tournament in Wales, and I was playing okay. I think I was about 17 at the time, but I was playing off a handicap of 4, I think, and I wasn't that special. But I also was in my heart at the same time. I was very good, but I couldn't just quite make sense of the game. And some days it was there, some days it wasn't. Whereas other guys would be like very, very consistent, and I just didn't have that. And I went out, and I think I went round the front 9 in 7 over par. So my head was all you know, messed up, and I had no idea where I was. And I played 10 and 11 in par. So I had 7 holes left. And like the guy I was playing with, I was just got along with him quite well all day. And I said, God, imagine if you could just go 7 under from there, just like that, just turn it all around. And lo and behold, I ended up shooting 7 under in my last 7 holes. And it was, you know, my mates, if they ever saw this, they'd laugh, because, you know, we're almost not allowed to talk about it now because it's been spoken about so much. But that was a massive, massive day for me, because it just showed me that I've got like that heart. I've got those birdies in me. And from there, I just kind of just kept going and just tried figuring it out myself. I struggle with ADHD. I'm not sure if it's ADHD or OCD. Just kind of being on a neutral kind of wavelength a lot of the time. Emotions get the better of me, so I have to kind of watch what I eat. Sugar, don't get too high, don't get too low, kind of thing. But that was a significant moment for me, and then I just kept pursuing it from there, because number one, I was lucky enough to, and then number two, I've always had a bit of a belief in myself that I can, if I want to do something, I can do it, and I will. So yeah, that's how it was for me.
And how did you, you know, you were being coached at that age, and we've talked about it before, but coaching is obviously expensive, and you didn't feel like you were getting the results or the consistency that you wanted. And that's where the MAC concept came from, that we've talked a lot about. On the podcast, that Patrick and I are using now, and is giving us incredible results, and that we're dubbing the scratch mat. But maybe just describe how that whole story came about, and how you started on that journey and developing that product.
100%. Yeah. Well, it was an interesting one, because I went through a lot of, well, not a lot, but I went through a few coaches, and it was expensive, and I didn't know if I was getting better or worse, and my swing didn't look better, didn't feel better. and it was costing a lot of money. So I was obviously feeling external pressure from the likes of my dad. You know, as you would, you're putting money into, you know, your kids, try and help them play better, and they're not even showing results and this and the other. So that was something that's an obvious factor, but it wasn't one that I was comfortable with at all. And I came across one coach that basically simplified the swing down into 3 positions for me, because there's always, you know, that you want your club there, you want the club there, club face there, club face there. So he really simplified it down to 3 positions for me: position 1, position 2, position 3. If position 1 and 2 are hit correctly, position 3 is kind of a natural move from those first 2 positions. And then
where did he get that idea from? Just quickly, where did he get that idea from?
He got that idea from just the studying of professional golfers. So he found a common denominator in all pro golfers. The best ones, best ball strikers, their club face would be there at this point. Then their club face would be there at this point. And it was really, really interesting. So he just told me to kind of use that as a bit of a feel. And I thought, God, this is really cool. I kind of like this. This is something to aim towards. At least I know what I'm doing with my swing now, instead of this feels right. Am I sure? Am I not too sure? Who knows? So I started messing around with it, and we moved into a house in the UK, not far from Liverpool. We were getting all these carpets kind of chucked out of the house and changed over, and this, that, and the other. So previous to that, I'd been using a kind of reference point as a rubber or a ball marker on the floor just to the right of me, and taking my club away to that and using it. But then I'd wake up the next morning and I'd go, well, where were my feet yesterday? Where was my club face? Was my feet square to the club face? Where was the rubber on the floor? It was all over the place, and this is where I'm not sure if I've OCD or not, but it just wasn't good enough for me. It wasn't up to the standard. So I'd got these carpets that had been chucked out, started drawing some kind of lines on them and set up positions, reference points, and I found that this was just incredible for me. I could roll this thing out and just hit these little positions that my coach wanted me to do, and then I'd video the positions. And I'd go, well, okay, well, he told me that's what I needed to do, but when you check it on video, it's actually not that right. So let's adjust the reference. And, you know, a few months down the line, I'd got it pretty good, but I found that the club that I was using just wasn't powerful enough to overcome that fight or flight mode that you're in when you've got a golf ball in front of you and your friends are watching, and, you know, your level par or your 5 under or whatever good is to you. It wasn't enough to kind of overcome that muscle memory. So I started searching up about the effects of doubling the weight of what you're trying to perform to increase the muscle memory that I was trying to perform. So I basically doubled the weight of this club and started going to these reference points, and it almost became like a workout. I was sweating, I was shaking. And then after about a month of doing this, I just kind of went to the golf course, and whatever I was doing on the mat, I seemed to be doing in front of a golf ball on the golf course. So I started going, gosh, okay, well, these reference points are so important. And I got really into it, and obviously it was a long process because, you know, to ingrain the muscle memory, it took about a month. And so if I didn't like a reference point and it was a little bit too outside the line or inside the line, it would take another month to notice me change that new reference point. So it became a long process of finding out points and this and the other. But finally at a stage now where we believe as a whole that we've kind of found, you know, the perfect reference point in general for people and their takeaway and their P2, and they can start worrying about the more important things in golf when we get them using their mat. You know, what's the wind here? Have I got the right shot shape? Have I got the right flight? How's this lie going to affect the shot? Blah, 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 blah. There's so many more external factors that are important to golf than the swing. And we don't want people worrying about their swing. That's the last thing. We just want solid foundations. And that's what it's created for me. And that's what we're hoping, you know, that it creates for other people. Because I just...
that's awesome.
I've never liked the idea of coaching. It actually stemmed from... at a very young age, I was at a driving range, and this had a cafe that looked out onto the bay that I was having a lesson in. So I was quite a young kid. I was about 11 or 12, and went into this place, and he didn't like the way that my legs were moving. So he put this basket in between my two knees and tried to separate the knees and stop them from folding. I thought, God, that's pretty cool. And so I went in after. I was waiting for my mum. And I looked inside the bay, and he was explaining the exact same thing to the next customer who went into his bay and put the basket under his legs. And I just started raising questions in my head. I just thought, well, that's obviously easier and more convenient for him, but is it helpful for the player? You know, the coach. Are they just getting told, you know, anything or drip fed information just enough so that they have to come back next week to give the coach more money? And it's probably the dark truth of it all. Like, these guys, you know, they want you to get good, but how good do they really want you to get, to the point where you're never going to have to see them again, or to the point where you have to come back next week? And at the end of the day, we want the best for all golfers, and that's really the goodness that, you know, in what we're trying to produce, instead of just.
And I think what really stands out for me in your story, and something that I've now experienced having worked with you, is that what you realized was that golf is such a specific and technical sport that centimeters of difference matter. And what you realized was, yes, this guy has given me, you know, he's simplified the backswing to 2 positions, maybe 3, but the reference points that you didn't have initially were still too much margin of error in a sport that's technical and a couple of centimeters left or right, you know, outside of it, make a big difference. And then because of your nature, which is a positive thing in this case, right, you realize that actually, okay, if I can combine that with a reference point on the ground that gives me my takeaway position for P1, and then I can combine that with a hinge trainer as the kind of the second piece of the puzzle that you put into it, it can give you that consistent swing on plane, hitting your point every single time, and increasing your consistency, increasing your confidence, adding all these benefits in. And then you took it a step further, which might have been serendipitous, I guess, just discovering that actually you probably have your muscles wired in a certain way already because of how you've swung a golf club up to that point, but that you could rewire it with a weighted club and hitting the correct positions and getting on plane every single time, which is incredible, right? And that's incredible when you put that in the context for amateur players whose biggest struggle is 2-way misses, probably off the tee. Gives them a lot of nerves because they don't know which way that ball's going to go. Don't maybe understand the correct swing plane to come back on. And there's not a product out there, I don't think, that has any references like that can train somebody into that. And even if there was,
there's not. Otherwise, I would have it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'd have it. I've gone through the training aids. I've gone through the coaching. But I'm, you know, if it's not perfect, it's not good enough for me, and that's always how I've been. So, you know, that was a massive thing. And the closest product I could find was something that I did use at one stage when I was younger, which is a bit of a silver circle that it's called swing plane something, and it's got this heavy club that's got a bearing on it, and it kind of gives you a feel for what the swing should be, but there's no face angle on there, there's no wrist set exact move. Can you travel around with this thing from country to country? Could you unfold it in the kitchen in front of your wife? No, you couldn't. So the convenience of this metal thing that a few golf clubs have is just not good enough. So that's where the mat becomes very easy to kind of travel around with, unfold
and probably
anywhere.
Doesn't create the correct range of motion for the player.
It doesn't.
In using that.
It doesn't exactly.
It's you and the club and the mat. Then you've got to work it out and really find
exactly.
That.
Yeah.
What would you think of the if you had to list them out? What are the main benefits for amateurs? You've obviously been coaching Patrick and I, and you're kind of seeing this from where we started to where we are now, which is incredible progress over a short period of time. But if you had to describe it to amateurs, say 17 to 15 handicap, so they've worked hard to get themselves down to that, probably self-taught, a few lessons, but everybody hits a wall there, right? Because that's the global average.
Yeah.
And I think it's because mostly people are self-taught, like Patrick and I. And we were both off plane, didn't fully understand what on plane meant. And then we had the challenge of rewiring that old muscle memory, which would come back in when we stepped up to a ball. But how would you describe the benefits to all those guys out there that, you know, to them, it's the bane of their life, right? They love playing golf, and then they
for sure.
and they don't know which way that ball's going to go.
The benefits are number one, you get a clear look at every day what your fundamentals should be. Is this club face square, and where's my feet in comparison to this square club face? You then get the perfect feeling of, is that takeaway right? There is no question that is the right takeaway. So you get a constant feel and feedback as to what is correct. And the longer and more you show yourself what those positions are, the more it's going to enter your body. And then eventually you'll get to a point where you get to take this swing out onto a course and just perform it like it's, you know, like it's nothing. Like you're throwing a ball to someone or kicking a football, just zero thought really. It's going to be more of a reaction based sport like we spoke about before, which is a bit easier. It's just going to be ingrained into your subconscious, which is so important. You know, for me, I've really come across leaps and bounds technically in my swing in the last 3 years, just using this. And obviously the first, year and a half, 2 years, whether the positions were right, as I said, going through the different reference points, even if they were wrong, they were consistently wrong. And I was providing myself with a consistent swing. Whereas what people tend to do is go to the range, fix one thing, and that breaks one bit of the chain, and then that messes up another bit of the chain, and they're constantly fighting this. I fixed that, but that means that has to be fixed. Well, I fixed that, well, that means that has to be fixed. So there's no consistency, where I was always moving towards consistency no matter what, and now it's more towards a consistently good swing instead of a consistently okay swing, which what it was. But the benefits are massive. I really do believe, these guys aren't going to have to show up to the range every day, buy hundreds of balls. They can just have that off day at home where they just spend it on their mat, just training their muscles. And the less interference they actually have with golf balls on the range, the more that muscle memory is going to dive into their real swing. That's really what I believe. If I had the choice between using the mat and just going on the course for the rest of my life, or hitting balls and just going on the course for the rest of my life and never using the mat, I know which option I'd take for the rest of my life, because it just gives me consistency and reference and clarity on absolutely everything every single day.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit. Yeah, because that's really interesting, because one of the challenges you've had, or we have with Pat and I, is obviously the time we don't have with 2 kids and not having time to go to the range and practice. Maybe talk through your typical week and how you train with the mat and the benefits of that. Because what we're saying is actually people can train at home 20 to 30 minutes a day with this workout routine. Probably only 10, 15 minutes of that is actually making the positions with that weighted club, because it is so heavy. It is very tiring, as we've experienced. But they don't have to go to the range. They don't have to go and play to improve their swing. They can actually train at home, and we've proven that already, because that's the process that we're following. But talk us through your typical week still now as a pro player. How do you do it?
So I make sure to touch the mat at least every day. I think I forgot to even mention, I added obviously a putting setup. So just something where I could put some training aids on top of a dot setup and just train myself on my stroke, my star line, using a mirror and gates. That's something I use quite a lot. But I'd wake up, use my mat for 15 minutes, and I can feel obviously a bit of a burn after it, as if I've just been in the gym, have a stretch. And then I'm either going to the golf course to work on my putting fundamentals, pace control, a little bit of short game, maybe some pitching, and then that is pretty much it. And I've been, trust me, I've been both people. I've been the guy who's come off the range with his hands bleeding, blisters here, blisters there. I've tried it all. because I've simply had to. I've had no other option. I can't accept all these other people beating me. I've got to find a way to succeed. So I'll try everything. And it's really been interesting to see that sometimes less is more and more is less, especially when it comes down to practice. And I go out on the course and all I'm doing is focusing on my routine. So my practice swings, I just focus on the feels from the mat, just as an extra bit of kind of, short-term muscle memory that really transfers into the swing. And then all I'm focusing on is kind of different flights. Am I trying to hit a fade? Am I trying to hit a draw? Yardage control, this kind of stuff, course management, the stuff that really plays an impact once you've got your swing in a good place.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we've talked a lot about the mat. I think the weighted club also had unexpected benefits for us. A couple of things that Pat and I talked about recently, and maybe you can talk to this. One, I used to always have a shoulder strain swinging off plane. And as soon as I started getting on plane and swinging with the weighted club and building up not only muscle memory, but golf-specific muscle strength in setup and stability, and then the mobility, that shoulder injury just disappeared. And I think it's a consequence that, and I know a lot of amateur golfers struggle with injuries, and I think it's because we're swinging off plane in all these different positions that are slightly different every time. And it's aggravating parts of our bodies. So two of the unexpected things were, one, it built a lot of strength, golf-specific strength into my body.
It will do. It'll hit the muscles you need. Yeah,
golf mobility and ability to rotate and have strength while rotating. Three, it took the injury away, which was incredible. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far, and it just seems to offer a huge amount to players to get them on plane. Once they're on plane, it will give them the confidence to work with a one-way miss, which has given me and Pat so much confidence, because we were I think half the time you don't commit off the tee because that you're not sure which way that ball's going.
Exactly.
And then
it's no fun place to be.
And adds even more problems to the swing because you're not fully committed. And now we've both, in probably, maybe 8 to 12 weeks, have got away from two-way misses and can work with a one-way miss so that we can plan our way around the course a lot better.
Yeah. But it's been a great journey for not only me, for yourself as well. We've been learning how to implement this mat towards you guys, towards new customers, because it was, as I said, like a very selfish thing, and then we came to realize that it can be extremely helpful for other people. And if that's the case, then that's what we'll do. But yeah, it's been quite the journey so far, I think. What was it you were saying?
Where do you think we can take it from here? Yeah, what do you? Because we've talked about developing the mat. The mat is obviously set up specifically for your swing from irons to all the way up to driver. Really, driver is the same setup. We've also got the putting station on there, which is a putting arc that we can. Again, this is your exercise. Maybe you can talk about the putting side a bit, because that was the thing that gave me and Pat the most benefit initially in the shortest period of time. Putting using that with a metronome, and then really finding that rhythm. I always used to pull out of putts, again, maybe because I was scared to hit them or not hit them because I didn't know what was going to happen. Would often pull it as well, so I was probably not coming back on the correct arc. Maybe talk about the putting side a bit of the mat, because that's so tick the boxes for amateurs who struggle to putt and struggle to hit irons, in a consistent fashion.
The most important thing in putting is three things: pace, start line, and read. So if you really simplify it down into those three things, it becomes very, very simple. So what we try and focus on the mat is to, number one, provide a solid setup which can help with pretty much everything. Pace, because you're applying the same loft, the same comfortable position every time. And then we work on start line through the arc that we work on. So we work on creating a solid arc and starting it through a gate every time. And then green reading is a separate topic that you kind of have to learn outside of the mat. We're not saying we can provide the entire world on this map, but it definitely provides you with the most important fundamentals you need in golf that you can't really access, I don't think, in many other places. But what I've been looking at recently, like I was saying to you, is once we've provided everyone with this putting setup, even though they've got it on the mat, it's quite hard to take it onto the course. So we're going to look at kind of creating a crib board, which is like a 2-piece puzzle piece that kind of you just fold up. And when you open it up, it's got holes in it that you fill in with tees. And within 30 seconds, you will have your mat set up on a putting green ready to use there, alongside, you know, the coaching that we've said we want to include along with the mat, where, you know, you're going to be coached on exactly what it is you're doing in your putting stroke, your putting setup that could be helping or affecting you. And this is just a lot more of a comfortable environment as well, because you're not having to travel to the golf club. You're doing this from home. You're doing this from a comfortable spot. And you don't have to worry about what anyone else thinks about what you're saying, because you are in your house and you're just covering the fundamentals. So everything about it is really, you know, the more we go down the line with it, it's very inviting to many golfers, I think, who want to improve their putting game and their overall game, I'd say. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've touched on many areas that amateurs struggle with, and that's the whole solution we're bringing to the table, without having to commit a huge amount more time to their training and giving them a way to do it at home. I don't think that really exists in the market so far.
No.
For golfers that are listening, amateurs that are amateur golfers, what are the 3 things that they could start focusing on now to improve their game? I'll give one example. I think, you know, I didn't realize the amount of, you know, detail and due care and attention, I call it, that was needed in golf. You have to be that specific in everything that you're doing, whether you're lining up your feet with the target line, whether you're, you know, making sure that the club face is square when you're addressing the ball to that target line. I thought I was being specific, but then I started working with you and understanding that went to an nth level, you know, of
for sure
specificity and
it's,
you know, making sure that
you're but we also like to keep it simple. We also like to keep it simple. I think that's a massive thing. A lot of what people are taught is it's one big facade, it's one big puzzle that you're never allowed to figure out, but you have to come and give us money just to get a little bit closer to this big secret that we all know. But if you really start adding up everything, you know, a lot of these PGA coaches across the globe, a lot of them can't break 76, 77, so they aren't holding any secret. They're holding nothing from you. They're teaching you what they've been told to teach. And at the end of the day, we all want to get to a level where we're shooting level par, because we know how attainable that is. You know, we watch these guys on TV and they're shooting 20 under par, 25 under par on thick rough, back tee boxes, fast greens, firm greens, under severe pressure, playing for a lot of money. These guys have families, kids. It's insane, but they make it so easy and so simple, and that's pretty much what we're trying to do. Whereas there's this one, every golf club has it, this secret. Oh, I found the feel, I've got it. Everyone's said it a few times. I've got it, I found it. You know, I've heard people say that a million times. You know, I'll you know, come back next week and we'll have the same conversation. If you're still saying it, I'll listen. But a lot of people haven't, and that's why creating a
because what is that
blueprint
that you're describing about golf? What is that? Because I think
misconception is
I think one thing quickly is that you know, amateurs watch pro golf because we love watching golf, and in our minds we think scratch golf is pro golf, like we talked about, but that's off the tips. We're talking about scratch golf off the resort tees or maybe the blues. That's very achievable for amateur players if they can do step 1, step 2, step 3, get their swing on plane and hitting off the tee more consistently, maybe with a bit more distance once they start making better contact. Learning course management now that they've got a reliable swing, and then managing the mental side of the game, right? But where does this whole misconception come from that you were also describing, where everyone's like, even the training aids are trying to sell a quick fix or a magic pill, and there doesn't seem to be a solution out there that actually gives people the reality.
No, it's because nothing really ever beats the the fight or flight swing that you've got, you know, that's always going to take over and overpower any little thought or special feel that you think you've come up with on the day. So it's very, very, very hard to change your swing. That's why the fundamentals and of what you do are so important. But the actual, I think people really, really overcomplicate everything when it can be made super simple. That there is no secret. The swing can be quite simple. You know, are you flexible? Are you setting up with the right fundamentals? Are you letting this club swing the way it wants to be swung? You know, people really force the club around their body instead of ask the question of, you know, what is this club trying to do when I'm swinging it? You know, just shut their eyes. Imagine it's their first time picking up a golf club, right? What is this thing? What does it want me to do? And how am I going to make this work? It can be really simplified down, and that's what I think.
Because the irony is the club wants to swing on its own plane, right? It wants to swing on its own weight.
Pretty much. Yeah.
We get in all of the way of that and throw it into all these different positions, and then we're trying to come back down to actually hit something. But actually, if you feel it with your eyes closed, it just wants to go where it wants to go.
It just wants to go where it wants to go, but you force it to do something else, which is the issue with these people. And another thing is that they find these little swing thoughts instead of finding an overall blueprint, consistent swing that they've got. If you hit your ball consistently 40 yards right if I hit it 40 yards right every single time, I could beat most people because I'm hitting it 40 yards every single time. I know where that ball is going every single time. So it's consistency over these feels. And what people do is they're fixing one thing, and as we said, they fix one thing and that breaks the other thing. So this amazing feel that they've got is only going to last 2 days. And then they have to face this one and find this one wherever it is in their body. Is it their hip? Is it is it the face angle? Is it the path? What is it? They have to find it. And then once they fix that, that changes another thing. So people aren't building a foundation. They're chasing a buzz. They're chasing an adrenaline rush instead of just going, okay, this needs to chill out. You know, it's like, how do I explain it? It would be like someone in their early 20s trying to chase loads of money, and instead of just putting aside a little bit of money into a FTSE 100 kind of big stock every month that's quite successful, very successful over many years, instead they go searching up how to be a crazy stock trader online, or how to be the next Wolf of Wall Street, and it's all of a sudden that they get a little bit of a buzz and then they go flying off somewhere else, and it's these rushes, and it's all to do with dopamine. I think, you know, I don't think many people in the history of golf, many people, if you look in the past, maybe even just 30 years ago, used to have pretty good swings, and it used to be quite a consistent game. People are getting worse because they're chasing these quick rushes, stack and tilt, super strong face. You're not a lot of these guys aren't super strong athletes that can afford to be putting all that pressure on their back, having zero loft on their face, having the speed to get this ball up in the air. You know, they're really chasing something that they shouldn't be at all. Instead of building.
And ironically to that, golf is a game of focus, right?
It is. Yeah.
Actually, the more you focus, the better you can perform. The more you can focus on making good contact with that ball, the better you'll be able to hit it. The more you can keep your head over, 4 hours, 4.5 hours, the better you'll perform, and just be in the present, be in those moments. So I think that could actually be a consequence of modern day life with smartphones and how we've been trained for those hits and everything else. That's interesting.
Exactly.
Which means people need to come back to fundamentals and put the work in.
100%.
Which is what we're
that's what we want to train people on. Keep it simple, but also create this muscle memory. I think the overall message is, like, I saw something the other day, instead of chasing butterflies, build a garden that butterflies will come and, spend their time in. We want to build an actual platform for our swing, for our putting, for our fundamentals, and just allow this game to be a lot more enjoyable for every single golfer out there. That would make me happy. If I can do that, and I've done a good job, and it makes me happy. I feel like I've made an impact in some way, because I've definitely made an impact on myself, and I've definitely felt, serious pain through this game, and it should never ever be that way. But I know other people feel it too.
Well, I think
and
through
it's
the
a brutal sport.
through the product you created, and through the journey you've been on, you've actually proved that it's possible. And obviously, amateurs are not trying to get to pro golf, but you've proven that just by having these foundations in place, people can make these progressions and actually become much better golfers. And part of our vision, which came from you, which I always loved, is that we want to teach them how to self-diagnose as well. And with this, we can do that. So actually, we can say, oh, hey, here's all the training. Here's the training aids you need.
Yeah.
Here's your development plan to give you the personalized elements, because everybody's slightly different, which will work with you on. But at the end of that, we can actually give that to you, and you should be able to self-diagnose, or at least start. This is what me and Pat have experienced. The more we've gone through this journey, the more we learn one thing, 5 other things present themselves for us to then learn. For me at the moment, it's all about how do I shift that weight, over to the left foot. And when I do that and I slow my swing down and I hold back as long as I can, I get a much better contact, a much better compression, and I get way more distance. So now I'm just discovering sort of the next layer of the onion, right? And we want to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I always love that about what you said. And that I can see that more and more now.
We want to teach these guys how to teach themselves. Yeah,
exactly.
We can teach them how to teach themselves, but also wake up and go, okay, I don't have to worry. They can worry about the smaller, more like nice things about golf, like what's the wind? Have I got the right clothes? Like these, they don't have to wake up and worry about the swing. Just think about nothing. Just have a fun chat with their mates, because they know that their swing is, it's not going to be different from yesterday, and tomorrow is going to be the same as today, because they've created this blueprint, this foundation for what their swing is, and they can rely on that and take it into any golf course, any country they want.
Let's give them a little bonus, because I think this is a really important one, and one that you're really strong on, which is the pre-shot routine. And this touches on a lot of the things that we've already talked about, from being specific, having a routine, just following your process for better results, for consistency. Maybe you can just talk through that a little bit and in detail, sort of the importance of the pre-shot routine, and probably what amateurs tend to do.
It is really important. Mainly for me, I found that it's all about how I can best get into best into the most natural position possible. So I find that I used to kind of stand behind the ball, and as I'd walk up to the shot, I'd start leaning back and looking at the flag, looking at the shot, and then I'd get over the ball and my spine would be tilted one way, my foot would be open that way, and everything would kind of be off track. So that is a massive part, just focusing on, staying neutral, staying tall, not doing anything I don't have to do, right? It's sometimes less is more, as we said. So that's one thing.
Maybe
and then just using my practice.
Terms, because what does staying neutral mean, and what does
So staying neutral to me, that's a great point. Sorry, get a translator on. Really. It's keeping my spine straight, so not falling to my right side as a right-handed golfer, kind of leaning back and looking up, and staying tall is really just keeping my chin up, keeping my chest in a neutral position, and not getting too hunched over as I approach the ball. But then again, a massive part of the routine for me is using my practice swings really well, and just reminding myself constantly of good movements, healthy movements before I go into this shot, and then feeling the shot I'm trying to hit itself. And then we've spoken a lot about, once you get to the ball, how you go through the process of deciding, what shot you're trying to hit based on where the pin is. So you kind of break it down into different categories like we've spoken about. And then the most important thing I've learned recently about kind of decision making in routines. So the routine is a massive thing. But in terms of decision making, I think you need to understand whether you're a numbers guy or a feel guy. And if you're anywhere in between that gap, you're going to struggle because you're jumping back and forth and you're not going to have much feel. So you need to be big on your numbers. So I've got 150 to the flag. Green's quite firm, so I want to land it 141. Sorry, 141. But it's into wind a little bit, so probably want to play 146 shot, I'd say, and then just kind of working around numbers instead of feel. You could be the other guy on the other hand who goes, right, it's 150 to the flag, it's into wind. This is the shot I see. That's the club I'm going to hit. Couldn't tell you quite how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And, you have to be one of those two people. So that's a big thing. Understand yourself.
You think it's better for them to make a decision to be one or the other, or to know what player they are?
And not definitely
trying to calculate
experiment.
Information.
Yeah, experiment between the two. There's nothing wrong with being a field player. I believe it was Shane Lowry that said he doesn't really have any idea how far his 7-iron's going until he gets to a course. Knows it flies about 175, let's say, and then he just kind of bases everything off there. A lot of it's visual, so the more visual you can get and eliminate numbers, the better you can be sometimes. So if you can picture a flight coming into a green, you can all of a sudden just put 2 and 2 together and see that 7-iron matches that kind of flight when you put it on the floor. So that stuff's really important. Pick one or the other, but definitely feel free to try them out. It's similar to using a line on your ball when you putt and not using a line on your ball when you putt. Using aim point, not using aim point. Feel free to try these things, but don't mess around between the two of them, because that's just inconsistent and you're not going to get good results from that at all. But just try. Yeah,
like you were saying earlier, you don't want to jump around to lots of different things because you never give the one thing enough time to really feel it out and understand whether that works for you or not.
Yeah.
Is that right?
But also, and that's a very good point. And then another thing is kind of create your own player blueprint. So as important as it is to understand why you're not doing something good in golf, you need to know why you are doing something good, because all people are ever doing is chasing this high of getting here. And once they get there, they're so amped up and excited about it that 2 days later they're like, oh my gosh, it's all gone. How was I doing it? Where's that swing thought gone? Instead of keeping track and making a mental diary and note of where their game's at, what their current thoughts are. And that's kind of what we've worked on with the player blueprint and creating that for guys, just so they can have some kind of reference in every part of their game. Just, in case they ever get lost, they can always go back to this kind of their own kind of book for themselves, which helps them. Yeah, that's big.
I feel like the more I go down this journey, looking at how I was as a player 8 months ago, the more I feel like golf is the opposite of all the things that I did back then. Trying to swing really fast, trying to swing really hard.
Yeah.
That for me, at my standard, that presents too many errors in the swing, and I'm going to hit balls right and left wildly. The more I slow down, the more and focus on contact and control, the better results I get. I feel like golf. Most of the amateurs out there is the same as hitting lots of balls at the range. That never helped me. I tried that to get better. I never understood what was working and what wasn't. I'd come away none the wiser from those 300 ball range sessions. Now I'm just using the mat for 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes swinging the club, and it's got me into the correct positions. I feel like slowing down as an amateur is where fits are, so that you really understand what your body's doing, what positions you're hitting, how the club's coming through. My thought, my swing thought at the moment on the course is swinging at 70% speed and 70% takeaway. And inevitably, I'm probably getting up to 80, even thinking to 70. But that gives me the time for my body to make that move and that transition over.
Yeah, should be within yourself.
Then I'm swinging slower. I'm not swinging as far back, but I'm getting a much better contact and compression with the ball because my weight's shifting. And I was hitting 7-irons, 175-yard carry the other day, without trying to smash them. There's all these sort of counterintuitive things in golf. The amateurs, what they see on TV, And actually they do better to copy the LPGA. And I used to always enjoy watching the ladies because you could see what they were doing more, because they don't swing as fast, they don't swing as hard.
A little bit slower. Yeah.
Slower, and you can see what the golf swing is. When you see the guys doing it, they've done it since they were kids. You know, it's so ingrained in them, that transition, and they can do it at full speed. I don't think amateurs can. So there's one message from all my experience so far for amateurs out there.
Slow down.
Slow down in every part of the game.
Yeah. I think this kind of goes back a little bit to what you're saying. If I had anything to say to amateurs, I think it would be, if you're going to go and focus on a few things, it would be fundamentals. Before you check anything, check your fundamentals are good. The next thing is make sure you've stretched well before you go out there. If any part of your body is restricted, it could affect the way that the club moves, and the club face control that you have might end up flicking at the ball because you don't have the flexibility to rotate through. And then the next one is kind of lateral shift. So the shifting between the right side of your body and the left side of your body. You can feel that in your feet. A lot of guys on tour, I remember talking to a coach once that said most guys on tour, whether this is true or not, he said it, and he was in quite a privileged position, but he said it anyway. He said a lot of guys mess around with their weight distribution. So that's, you know, whether they want to feel little things here or there, a little bit of a lower fly, they might bump more weight on the left foot. Look, you know, these are things that you can mess around with in terms of ball striking, and then probably ball position. I'll mess around with ball position a little bit, but these are a few little things that you can work on to help you strike it better, to get more consistency. But
let's talk about the weight one. Yeah, that's all really good advice. Let's talk about the weight one, because that came up for me recently. We were talking about it. Yeah. And as an amateur, in my mind, the weight shift is like, even just until last week, right? It's move all that weight over to the right foot, and then move it all the way back again. And then we started talking about it, and you were saying you're shifting over too much. Your weight should be almost an equal balance. Let's say 60% on your right foot, your takeaway foot. And then as you transition, maybe move it up to like 70 or 80. And then
it's just
I don't know how much I thought like that. I thought, I meant to load everything onto my right foot. And now it's like, I need to keep a balance of both feet, but there's slightly more on the back foot. And then as I take away, there's a little bit more, and then the weight comes through. But I've still got to keep that stability of 2 feet, right? It's not 1 foot, 2 foot. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. So you'll never really see too much of an issue with guys that fall too much onto their right side on the takeaway or their backswing, because all that gives them is more loading power and more shifting speed into the left foot, which is the attacking side, into the back of the ball. As we approach the downswing. But people who want to get more out of their backswing, get a little bit further, get a little bit more distance is what they think they're doing. They tend to stack all their weight into the left foot. So now you've got all your energy stored in your left foot and zero energy stored into the right foot. So now you can't transfer anything into the left foot because it's already all there. So now all you can do is either lose your height and kind of move all your energy onto the right side, which is the complete opposite of what you're trying to do. So you lose power, you lose compression, you end up flicking at the ball. And overall, it just creates a massive heap of inconsistency. Whereas if you watch the best guys in the world, they stay very central, if anything, just 60-40 onto their right side. And then they've loaded all this power and they can just shift into the left side and rotate comfortably and compress the ball really, really well. So, yeah, these things are important. But if you're not flexible in a certain way, or someone hasn't told you that, then you might find yourself falling over to the left side and stacking quite a lot, which is what we found with you. So we just want you really staying central / on the right side, loaded with all that power, and then you can really just fire away into your left side with so much freedom, and rotate and compress.
That's what I was doing as well, right? What you've just described. On your backswing, loading your weight into your left foot straight away, which is the opposite of what you're meant to be doing.
I've done it before.
It's hard to describe the consequences of that. You showed me in a video.
It is.
For me.
It is.
But everything's wrong if you do that. But
it is.
But
it's
people
the
might
reverse,
not realize that they're doing it like I didn't. you know, because when I make that rotation, you're focusing on the rotation, and suddenly I'm like, oh, all that weight's gone actually onto my lead foot.
Yeah.
But you might not know that. So that's definitely
it's
something
interesting. Like the difference between you carrying it, your 7-iron 180, taking it so far back and clipping it 1 time out of 5 instead of carrying it 170, swinging within yourself, staying really quiet. I think I used Ludwig Aberg as a great example for you yesterday. If you look at that guy swing a club, it looks so quiet. You wonder how on earth he's carrying his ball 320 yards, because it just looks so still, so precise, so quiet. Whereas a lot of amateur golfers look like, oh my gosh, he's using every muscle in his body here. Like, this has to go a mile. It goes 150, because they've stored all their energy in the wrong places instead of stay neutral, stay 50-50 in their weight, and then just boom, use all the power, create width within the arms. So that's just kind of what we're trying to create for you. But yeah, just stay on top of the weight distribution, really.
Awesome. Let's run through a few questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I know the answer to this one, but if someone can only train 30 minutes a day, what exactly would you make them focus on?
I'd say just stretch, keep yourself flexible, go on the mat for, like we said, 10 to 15 minutes, and then cover some putting fundamentals. Just remind your eyes where everything has to be. That's a great thing as well. You know, you line up to a ball sometimes on a putting green. You go, well, no, I'm aiming my face on the right edge of the cup, and then your mate goes, you're aiming it 2 cups left of the hole. You're not aiming it right edge. And then he takes a picture, and you are. So these kind of things, just reminding yourself of your eyes with your putting every day is so important. Stay on top of that. The 30 minutes you do a day is really important. Yeah.
Another one. How would you coach someone, you know, who's been stuck in their swing for 7 years? Like me, my swing was like that for 20 years before we started using the mat.
I think we'd just go reps, and we'd really have to kind of explain the theory. As long as they understand the theory of how hitting loads of balls can contradict their muscle memory growth and really rub against it in the wrong way, if we can make them understand how that really does affect the rewiring of their muscles, then they'll probably listen, and they'll probably give you 2 weeks of solid work within the first 2 weeks of getting their mat. And they'd really notice the difference, right? And we're also going to do that with the temporary dot. So that temporary dot is going to shift them completely to an opposite feel of what they're already doing, which then helps them neutralize a lot faster to a more kind of level playing field. And then we start diving into the setting of the club, the perfect takeaway.
Maybe it's better described as the correction dot, and maybe you can describe from your perspective how that happened for me. So I had this swing for 20 years. And then I start using this mat. So I've it's the same as the question. I've swung that way ever since I swung a golf club, obviously. And then within 8-12 weeks of using the mat, it's corrected it. But we had to use this correction dot. So maybe, you can explain it from your perspective.
Yeah, so I found with you that you know, you'd really be taking the club, you know, way inside on the takeaway, and that, you know, cause a load of issues for the rest of the swing. And so I just thought, well, gosh, I mean, the move to neutral isn't as strong and isn't as hard hitting as if we actually created a complete opposite of what he's doing. So however much inside he is, we move him the same amount outside, and that kind of creates a neutralizing effect towards his takeaway, and kind of get you taking it away on a more neutral path a lot faster than just edging towards perfect would do. Instead, we got you over here, which then puts you right back to there a lot faster. So that's a really cool concept that we kind of got all together just through trial and error, and that's what this is all about. But the progress in it is just incredible, really. So
that was a good learning, right? Because it was when I was training on the mat and we were doing swing analysis sessions, I was swinging on plane and I was hitting the dots. But as soon as I stepped in front of a ball, the old muscle memory just kicked straight back in again. I didn't know. until we videoed it, until I videoed myself. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm coming back inside again. Even though when I'm training, I'm coming all the way out, right?
Yeah. But like you said, like this guy's 7 years. So this guy's been swinging it this way for 7 years. You know, you just have to take golf and put it into other areas in life that are more understandable. So someone's been, you know, someone's had an addiction of some sort for 7 years. We're not going to throw them in that addictive environment again. We're going to put them in, you know, they go to rehab for 7 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. That's what this is. You know, we are rewiring and recreating the swing. We have to put them into golf rehab,
we
basically.
Call it golf rehab. I love it.
Golf rehab. That'd be good. But that's, you know, if I can describe it in the best way possible for you for other people to understand, that's really how I'd put it. And I see no other way of changing the swing than that. And you know.
Yeah, well, I've experienced it firsthand. It's incredible. Like, you know, but to correct that amount of, you know, muscle memory within, you know, 2 months is crazy. It's so good.
Yeah, and we're still improving and getting better, but we're, you know, we're pretty close to the end thing where we can kind of start getting these mats out to people and them seeing the benefit for themselves. So that's great.
Yeah. I know we can't wait to get it out. What's one drill every amateur golfer should be doing, but 99% ignore?
Oh, the takeaway. If your takeaway is wrong, everything else has to be wrong for your golf swing to be right. So Padre Carrington has a great saying: you don't want a good swing with a bad golf grip. You know, if you're swinging the club great, but you're gripping it incorrectly, the club face is always going to come back to where you were gripping it incorrectly. The takeaway, I mean, Sam Burns talks about it a lot. He says he just wants his takeaway to be perfect. Perfect. Because if the takeaway is perfect, you know, you've started the whole chain reaction, the domino effect of the swing in good fashion. So I don't know if you can hear that. That's my mum coming with the dog. She loves the dogs.
Okay, one more, and then we'll wrap it up. But let's quite an interesting one again. That's interesting for all the amateurs out there listening. If you had to start over as a 15 handicap, I know.
Hey up, mum.
Cut this bit out.
Cut this out.
Yeah, like to put yourself into an amateur's shoes. If you had to start over as a 15 handicap again tomorrow, I mean, what would you do in the first, you know, month, 30 days?
As a 15 handicap, would I have the mat, the club? Number one, I'd use the mat. I'd use it and do good quality reps on it. I'd start with quality reps over quantity. We found that Patrick, when he started using it, was quantity over quality. Now he's in a perfect kind of, you know, happy medium of doing it perfectly with a good amount of reps, where he's turning it into a bit of a gym session and hitting quality positions. So I'd make sure I'm just know what good is first and then start speeding up those good positions. 15 handicaps. So I'd go to the golf course. I'd make sure my fundamentals of my putting were all bang on. My grip, my setup, they've gone from the mat all the way onto the driving range. And then all I'd do from there pretty much is play. And I'd go out with good golfers. I'd find people who are better than me that can give me tips here and there, and I can get bits of advice from them. And really just keep working on my mat, going on, you know, hitting a few balls here and there, nothing too major, because I do want to create the muscle memory without being in fight or flight and kind of flicking at the ball or doing what feels most comfortable. So
getting that
that's how I'd approach it.
Parameters seems to be the first thing to get done, and then everything else comes as a result. I think today we've talked a lot about obviously your history, which has been amazing, and how you got to this point and how you created the mat itself and the mat concept. We talked a lot about the weighted club and the swing mat, and then all of that naturally leads on to next week. We can talk about course management, mental game, all the biggest parts of it, of the whole game for amateurs. We can talk a bit about how when we started working on this business, I I'd obviously met you, I'd played golf with you, I saw the level of detail you took in your setup and everything else, and I was learning about all this stuff just through talking to you. And I got a 74 without even changing my swing, and before that I'd never broken 80 before. So just using some of the mental game techniques that you'd given me, some of the course management stuff, suddenly shot this 74 out of the blue when I'd never broken 80. And around that time I was shooting more like, 15 over, sometimes 20, so we can talk a bit about that next week.
Well, I think we kind of move on to, I think the way we kind of want this to go is to kind of give people obviously the knowledge side of it, create an understanding from their point of view, so they understand why we say everything we say. We're not going to say anything for the sake of saying it. That's what we want to do. We want to create a perfect swing for them, and then eventually, if people wanted to take part, we can get them involved in the boot camp where we dive into a more in-person kind of look at, right, we've got you where we want you swinging the club, fine kind of tweaks here and there. And then we go into chipping, reading greens, taking them out on the course, just making sure that they're seeing things very clearly and in the right way. There is no right or wrong way, but we want them seeing it in the right way for themselves, kind of bringing them closer to themselves in terms of how well they understand how they want to play golf. That's what we
teaching them.
Yeah.
That's it. We haven't really covered that, but obviously
just apply that to them.
Yeah. Well, if anybody's made it this far, we're an hour in. But what we're essentially offering is the current version is an online program that covers all of that in an holistic way, and we send them the weighted club and a version of the mat that they can get started with. And then eventually, as they progress through that, there's a 7-day boot camp they can come and attend and work with us. And we start to rebuild their swing with them, give them advanced techniques across all those disciplines in person in a 7-day intensive program. So that's kind of what we're talking about. But it's been great to get into it all with you.
I've loved it.
It's been really fun, really insightful.
No, some great topics spoken about there.
And I think next week we'll just we'll pick up on course management, mental game, and get your knowledge and experience in those areas and how you approach all that.
Sure.
And we'll catch up next week, buddy.
No, enjoyed it. Cheers, Phil.
All right.
Thank you.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.